You were a conscious, experiencing person for at least the first 2 to 3 years of your life. You had preferences, fears, moments of joy and frustration, relationships with people who loved you, and you remember essentially none of it. Not because nothing happened, but because something about the way memory works in early childhood makes almost all of it inaccessible to the adult brain you eventually became. That gap has a name, and the explanation for it is stranger than most people expect. The obvious assumption is that babies can't form memories yet because their brains aren't developed enough. That's partially true, but it misses the more interesting part. Infants and toddlers can and do form memories. They recognize faces, learn language, develop habits and emotional responses that persist. The issue isn't that memories aren't being formed, it's that they're being formed in a format that the adult brain can't later retrieve. The hippocampus, the brain region most associated with forming retrievable autobiographical memories, develops rapidly during early childhood. But during the first 2 to 3 years, the system for encoding memories in a form that's accessible to the older, language-using, self-narrating brain you become isn't yet in place. The experiences happen, the traces exist in some form, the retrieval pathway simply doesn't connect. Here's one of the more compelling theories. Memory, particularly autobiographical memory, the kind where you remember yourself as the protagonist of your own life, is deeply tied to language. When you recall a past event, you're not just replaying sensory data, you're constructing a narrative, a story that places you at the center of a sequence of events. Before you had language, you couldn't construct that kind of narrative. Your experiences were real, but they weren't stored in a format that maps onto the storytelling structure your adult memory uses. Once language develops, memories start being encoded in a way that later retrieval is possible. But the pre-language experiences remain, in a sense, untranslatable, stored in a format the adult mind can't read. Here's something genuinely surprising. The age of your earliest accessible memory isn't fixed. It varies significantly across cultures, and researchers think language is the reason. Studies comparing adults from different cultural backgrounds find that people from cultures with strong oral storytelling traditions and a practice of parents narrating shared experiences with children tend to have earlier first memories than those from cultures where talking about personal experiences is less common. Maori adults in New Zealand, for example, have earlier average first memories than European or Asian adults, and researchers attribute this partly to Maori cultural practices of detailed, emotionally engaged storytelling about family experiences with young children. The memory capacity is the same. The practice of building the retrieval pathway is different. Here's the philosophical part that doesn't get enough attention. The person who experienced your earliest years, who felt things, formed attachments, reacted to the world, is not directly accessible to the person you are now. Not because that person is gone, but because the format they stored experience in can't be read by the adult you became. In a meaningful sense, your earliest self is a stranger to you. You carry the consequences of that person's experiences. Their early attachments shape your adult relationships. Their early environments affect your stress responses, but you have no direct memory of being them. They existed, they mattered, and they are, to your adult consciousness, almost completely invisible. So you weren't absent for the first years of your life. You were there, experiencing things, being shaped by them in ways that still affect you. You just can't read the format those experiences were stored in, and no matter how hard you try to remember, the retrieval pathway doesn't exist. Whatever happened in those first years is still in you. You just can't access it from here. If you want to learn more about this topic, feel free to subscribe.